Excellent. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the good start. Get my words out. Environment Advisory Group. I'm Councillor Stuart Gawley, portfolio holder for Environment and Highways, and chair of the Environment Advisory Group. So the members joining me this evening are currently in the room. We've got Councillor Culver, Councillor Martha Vickers, and we also have a few more, I believe, that are joining us in person, but they might be a wee bit late. Councillor Nick Carter, there we go. Just look at that timing. And we also have a few others potentially joining us online. Councillors Paul Kander and Councillors Richard Sumner as well, potentially joining online. We also have officers supporting this evening's meeting, which is Kofi Adu-Giamphi, who's the Service Lead for Climate Change, Daniel Warren, who's the West Berkshire Council Waste Manager, John Winstanley, Emily Ashton-Jelly, Paul Hendry, Thomas Radbourne, who's the clerk for this evening, and Sam Chiverton, who is our Zoom host this evening. We're also expecting the following presenters to join us this evening. We've got Rob Daniels from the Greenham Trust. We've also got Ian Sanderson and Matt Ansell. So there's 3 names on my sheet. So I was just trying to read with my terrible eyesight. So is Oliver not joining us this evening? Cool. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you. So in terms of housekeeping, if we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route and follow instructions given by officers. We've got a couple of fire escapes there, over there, and then one there as well. And the assembly point is the car park at the Dolphin Pub, which is basically that way. Just follow the beer. If the lockdown allowance sounds, remain seated and await instructions from officers, and we'll adjourn the meeting until such time as it's safe to proceed. One of the things I would say for our presenters this evening, if you wish to speak, just use your microphones in front of you. Just press the wee button on the right-hand side that's got a little person and what looks like sound waves, and that will allow you to kind of speak properly, and that means that everyone online can hear as well. Cool. Anyone got any questions before we move into the agenda proper? No? Cool. Marvellous. Excellent. Also, welcome to, I've got members of the public here as well. Sorry. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. So item number 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies received from Councillors Richard Sumner, who have stated they may dial into the meeting.
Excellent. And also Jenny Graham, I think, one of our officers.
My apologies, Chair. Yes, Jenny Graham as well.
Thank you very much. Excellent stuff. Cool. So item 2 is the minutes of the previous previous meeting, sorry, which was the 30th of September. Have we got a copy of those? Has everyone had a chance to read them? Okay, cool. I think I'll sign now. To kind of a proposer for those minutes, please. Cool. And a seconder. Okay, cool. Councillor Vickers proposing and Councillor Culver seconding. All those in favour? It's just the 4 of us in the room. Cheers, thank you. Signature. Okay. Thank you very much. Cool. And then item number 3 is declarations of interest. Anyone got any declarations of interest at all? No? Marvellous. Excellent. So that means we're straight into item number 4, which is an overview of the Greenham Trust's environmental and social impact initiatives. So I'll hand over to you, Rob, and happy for you to take us through what happens next.
Thank you very much. Okay, cool. Thank you. Hi there. My name's Rob Daniels. I'm the head of grants at Greenham Trust. I've been with the trust for 2 years now. So this evening I'll be talking you through what we do at the business park from an environmental point of view, and then also running through some of the projects which we've been supporting over the past few months and years, and some stuff that's going to be happening in the future. So if we go to the first slide, and I'll talk about Greenham Business Park. So as you may know, this used to be the US Air Force Base at Greenham Common. The runway is long since departed and is now underneath the bypass. All the old military buildings is now the business park as is. On the slide photo, you can see when it comes up onto the next slide. So you can see that we've got a mix of new builds and then some old hangars as well. And there's some old sort of MOD 1950s buildings as well. So we're in the process of replacing a lot of the old buildings that were there because they're no longer fit for purpose. But all new construction that we've had over the past few years, there's been a few more buildings put up since this photo was taken as well. So there's the new Berkshire Vets up in the top left corner as well, which is a new building gone up, and then Altitude as well, which is another big sort of 30,000 square feet warehouse as well, which is not in this picture. Yes, so all new developments on the business park are designed, built to BREEAM very good rating. We don't qualify for excellent because we're too far from the train station, but they would be excellent if we were closer to the train station. So that's a quite interesting thing. And all developments going forward on the business park are built to achieve an energy performance rating of at least A, and higher if we can. All energy on the business park itself is approximately 18 million kilowatt hours per annum, is from 100% renewable sources. All developments include provision for solar photovoltaic panels on the roof. We've got currently over 40,000 kilowatt hours have been generated by the solar installs that we currently have, and we're currently looking to retrofit on some other buildings as well. But yeah, some of the old hangars and stuff are quite old, so can't take it. But wherever we can, yeah, we're going to be looking at doing that. All green waste generated from the ground maintenance team is composted on site as well. Recycling facilities are provided around the estate, including card recycling, plastic, polystyrene and paper. We promote the recycling of aggregate materials used for new developments on site, reducing vehicle movements as well, associated with importing and exporting of material. We also promote and improve accessibility for more sustainable modes of transport as well. So we've got cycle parking, locker facilities and showers across the business park. And we subsidise the bus fare from Newbury onto the business park as well. And there's a dedicated car sharing spaces within the new developments that we put onto the site. So that's sort of a round view of what we do on the business park in terms of our environmental credentials. If we move on to the next slide, I'll move on to talking about some of the environmental projects that we are currently supporting. And I looked at the minutes of your last meeting and saw that some of these projects you've heard about in more detail. So I'll just do a sort of summary of those. The first one I've got here is the Newbury Nature Corridor, which we've financially supported using the rental income from the business park goes into the pot, as I'm sure you know. So Newbury Nature Corridor, so I had a long discussion with the team that run this at the Wash Common Community Festival back in September. So it's going to be a super highway for insects all the way from Wash Common to North Croft, with various areas of wasteland being converted into sort of improved biodiversity and nature habitats, and also getting involved schools and scout groups and other community groups as well to help promote that, which is, yeah, fantastic provision. And there's going to be another corridor coming soon from Greenham down into town. So that's a really good project. Next one we've got is the St Bart's School, and that sort of feeds in and is linked into the nature corridor as well. So we're supporting them, creating a new habitat for wildlife and interactive learning space with pond dipping stations. There'll be a controllable waterfall for geography lessons, educational boards, positivity a reflective space for mental health and well-being as well for young people at the school, and then polytunnel growing areas and a wildflower meadow as well. So yeah, we're helping them put that together. As Greenham Trust, we can't support educational things ourselves or stuff that the council should be funding, but outside of the classroom, we can help the school with sort of enrichment activities. On to the next slide. So at the top of the nature corridor, there is the Newt project, which is 37 acres of land next to North Croft, with permission to turn it into a nature reserve. I visited this with my colleague over the summer. It was incredible. It looked like a jungle. It didn't look like we were in Newbury at all. It was a fantastic project, and one that we're very keen to support. It's going to be quite a spectacular route around the different meadows that they've got and the water meadows, and then on down to the canal as well. So making boardwalks and supporting this project will be a real benefit to the community and for schools to come and visit and all sorts. So yeah, we look forward to seeing the progress on this one coming forward. Newbury Beekeepers Club. So yeah, we're supporting them with swarm collection equipment. So there's a phone number you can dial, and if you've got a swarm nearby, they'll come and collect the swarm and deal with it for you, which is a fantastic service. We're supporting them with a library, Asian hornet monitoring, and an educational hive as well. So they can go around to do talks to schools and youth groups and various other educational facilities to support that. So that's another great project that we look forward to helping with. The next slide, we've got Newbury Rugby Club. So we've supported them with, I think, over 40,000 of funding towards their new solar panels and replacement LED floodlighting. So I think the solar panels are now up and the floodlighting project is ongoing. The plan is to save 18.35 tonnes of CO2 and save over £1,000 a month in their energy bills. As you might know, Newbury Rugby Club have historically not had great financials, and so this is sort of a big step in not only making them environmentally sustainable, but also help the club in terms of finances as well, to make them sustainable as an operation going forward. So yeah, this is a really great project, which and lots of other clubs are also converting to LEDs as well, which we're looking to support, and as well as other solar projects as well. So that's that. On to the next slide. So I think 2-3 years ago was Greenham Trust's 25th birthday, and as part of that, we put together a scheme to provide planting for any council, school, organisation, charity that would like to plant trees in their area. We've distributed over 8,500 trees so far to 100 different charities and organisations. All the information's on our website for how to apply, and they're absolutely free. So this photo is of our local scout group. We planted, I think, over 200 or 300 hedge saplings over the past few years to sustain our environment where we're based up in Washcommon. And then the next project is a bit more of a long-term project. So reimagining the canal side. So this project is started off, I think it was the West Berkshire Council working with Canal and River Trust to renew a bit of towpath between Bulls Lock and Hambridge Road. The council came to us saying, would you like to match fund this project? And we said yes. So we put 80,000 in to match the council's 80,000. And then myself and my boss were sat in the office thinking that this renewing the towpath on this stretch was a great scheme and had so many different benefits to the community, not just accessibility, but people transporting, getting people off roads, cycling, buggies. Then there's environmental projects that can happen along the towpath as well, and the canal users themselves. So as we were considering this, we thought, wouldn't it be great to do the whole of West Berkshire? So yes, hopefully, with many other partners as well, we're looking to renew the towpath across the entire of West Berkshire, about 38 kilometres. And at £400 a metre, it's quite a chunky project. So it will require quite a lot of other partners' involvement. We're very early stages with the partnership with Sustrans and the Canal River Trust as well, and West Berkshire Council. But yeah, we're hopeful that over the next several years, we'll be able to link up all the pieces that have already been done with new sections as well, and renew the whole towpath. Over the past 25 years or so, Greenham Trust has been had a similar project, but renewing all the village halls across the area. And so this will be our next sort of long-term project that we're hoping to invest in. And then in terms of social projects, I don't know if you want to spend too much time on this, but so just the other side of the border in Bishop's Green, which is just next to the business park, is an area of deprivation and needing support. So their village hall was due to close. So I met with some of the trustees and we put a plan together working with Sovereign Housing and Basingstoke-on-Deane to put a hall coordinator in place to generate bookings, look after the hall, and then with the bookings, they can then generate their own salary. So over the next 3 years, our funding will reduce as they bring up their own salary through bookings. And we've also put a youth group in place as well there to help the young people and reduce antisocial behaviour. And so that project's been going for about 18 months now and is making a real difference in that community. Community Youth Project up in Greenham, and we're working closely with them as well. We fund 2 youth workers and we own the hall there as well. And we're working with them to improve the offering that they have for the youth of Greenham as well. So putting on additional extra evening youth clubs, a Friday night youth club for the older ones as well, and breakfast clubs as well. So sort of improving the facilities there and making that, getting people off the streets and engaging the youth and helping them to grow. Then the Essential Household Goods Scheme, this is run by Community Furniture Project and UB Community Resource Centre. So we fund goods, and so white goods and beds and carpets for social housing and anybody that requires it. It costs a lot of money, but it's also doing amazing things. And as the cost of living crisis continues, there's a lot more that needs to be done in that area. We also support Citizens Advice Bureau, food banks, soup kitchen, loose ends, and all the other sort of frontline charities in the cost of living crisis. And we're not just a funder in this. So last Thursday, some of you might know that myself, Chris, our CEO, and 2 other of our team, we slept out in Newbury overnight to raise funds for the cost of living fund. And we've raised over about £10,000 so far, with donations still coming in. It was a cold night, but worth it. But yeah, so that was very good. And then online presence. So all this information you can find on our website, and we're also on social media as well, so you can find info there. But that's it.
Thank you very much, Rob. That's really much appreciated. I think we are very, very lucky in West Berkshire to have the Greenham Trust on our doorstep. So, you know, thank you to you and the team for all of the work that you do on behalf of residents of West Berkshire, really, and the many, many good causes that you support across West Berkshire and also Hampshire. You know, it's really, really important, and it's a great. We are really very lucky to have it on our doorstep. So thank you for that. I've got one question online already from Councillor Tony Vickers, and then we'll come to Councillor Martha Vickers. Councillor Tony Vickers, do you want to come off mute and ask your question, or do you want me to ask it for you? I can see it in the chat. Oh, here it comes.
Yeah, I can ask it myself. You see, we live very close to Northcroft Park, and I was very interested in this Northcroft project. Trying to work out exactly where it is. Is it on the Thames Waterland east of the railway line, or is it Sutton Estates land on the west?
So it is the Thames Water. So they've got a very long
Right.
lease. They've agreed with Thames Water. But
Oh,
yes,
fantastic. Yeah,
from
I
North
know exactly what you mean. So it's sort of northwest of Northcroft Park,
yes.
and either side of the Lambourne Valley Way that runs along under the old railway line. I can see it exactly.
And the old railway line is part of the route as well. So you go up to the
Fantastic.
route, then you can come around. So yeah.
Oh, that's really fun. I've trespassed there many times, but now I can do it legally.
Thank you. I've never quite trespassed there, but I have been interested to know what's up there, so I'll be looking forward to it.
Amazing. It really
I look forward to getting there. Councillor Martha Vickers.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask about that, but you got in there first. But yes, on that, I think there was some lovely wildflowers around there, sort of at the end of all, because, you know, after all that flooding, sort of that area was absolutely magnificent, I think, sort of in the spring. So it's an interesting area. And I think a lot of people have been illegally cutting through along there for quite some time. So thank you for explaining that. Yeah, I was going to ask a few other things. I attended the Reimagining the Canal side presentation out in Aldermaston, wasn't it?
Yes, at Padworth, yeah.
That's a really exciting project. I mean, I know it's going to go on over a long, long period, but for anybody who ever cycles down the canal, you know, and is sort of, you know, particularly the route sort of going from Thatcham to Reading along that way, you know, I mean, it's really quite exciting to know that that's going to be addressed. So thank you very much for getting involved with that.
Part of that is also moving the National Cycle Network 4 off the A4 and then down onto the towpath through Newbury, so get the cyclists off the roads as well.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, we've got a son with a house in Reading. Whenever he stays with us, he goes on his bike, and I'm always expecting him to end up in the canal or something because it's so tricky to go along there. Yeah, I was going to ask you just a couple of things. You help a lot of charities, and I know some years ago, and I think it's still sort of rumbling around somewhere, we talked about possibly Greenham Trust being involved in funding some sort of hub, getting a hub going where charities could all be together. I know the Soup Kitchen's looking for premises at the moment, but there's also been some talk about, you know, a sort of one-stop shop for things. There's sort of need for that sort of thing, really. And the Old Baptist Church was talked about for a while, and I think the Town Council is chasing that up again. And I wondered whether Greenham Trust, I don't know, is that something you might consider, or is it?
Absolutely. We've been working with Merrill and the Soup Kitchen for the past 6-8 months to try and find the most suitable property. We've got a couple of irons in the fire. There's one coming up this week, which we're looking at. And we're very hopeful to be able to resolve Merrill's housing issue. And it's a good place on a good site, which will be big enough for all their needs and all the outreach and everything that they do. So yeah, we're fingers crossed, but yeah, we have to buy the building, and so we might not be the highest bidder, but you know, we're going to do our best for them.
So that's ongoing. It was not just about the Soup Kitchen, it would be hopefully more extensive than that. Yeah. And just another little thing, I was just wondering whether with young people, whether you can create opportunities for young people in what you do, whether it's job experience or whether going into schools or the water side to sort of, I just give presentations about the opportunities out there for young people and
So yeah, we work with ourselves as funders. We don't do that, but we do work with Education Business Partnership, with Berkshire Youth, and with all the other youth clubs that we talk about, to provide funding for them to do to get out there and support. So yeah, we do it through other organisations rather than ourselves.
Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Really, really positive. Great to hear about what you're doing. I did mention to Richard from Newt a while ago about the EAG meetings. I think they're great. I suspect he's waiting until he's got his feet under the table a bit more with that project.
Yes, yeah, it is early days.
Yeah. Corridors is great. I mean, we've obviously been talking about corridors and local nature recovery strategy, which all of the unitary authorities of Berkshire are working on together. So that's great. And there's so much that we can do with yourselves and landowners to work on those corridors. So that's brilliant. What I'm quite interested in, we've got something called members' community bids, and each member of the council is allowed to bid for £5,000 a year, which isn't a huge amount of money, but you can, beg your pardon, sorry. Yes, the members' community bids, each member of the council can bid for £5,000 a year, and it'd be quite good to maximise that as much as possible. So the parish councils or the local community groups fund it, and then we can get match funding from West Berkshire Council. But it'd be great if we could come to you guys, match fund what the parish is put into the pot, and then match fund with what West Berkshire can fund, and then we could get so much more. The deadline for that this year is the start of January, and it's been various times of year in the past. Would it be possible to get from you guys a bit more information about how it might work if we wanted to come to you and get some of the funding before we then go to West Berkshire Council to match funding?
So we already have match funding agreements with most parish councils in the area, but yes, we can certainly discuss.
Thanks very much. Councillor Tony Vickers.
Yeah, another thing that occurred to me after we had the members briefing from the North Wessex Downs National Landscape Team last week, and there was a slide showing some hedge laying, the proper traditional hedge laying. And it would be really nice if we could have more properly laid hedges in the national landscape, because I'm sure they're better over their lifetime for wildlife. So surely should be seen as an environmental project worth supporting. But is that something that Greenham Trust might consider supporting? I don't know in what way, whether you could help run training courses for people. I mean, and there's one person I know that is in the business, has recently set up a business for hedge laying, but there's an awful lot of hedges to lay. It'd be nice to have a few more people qualified. And I know it's a very expensive thing for a landowner to pay for, whether there's any argument for them to be funded or to be assisted with the costs of laying hedges. So I just hate seeing a hedge sort of hacked away by a passing piece of machinery.
Yeah, so we would have to work with an organisation to do that. We wouldn't be able to do that ourselves, and we can only work with non-profits. So we wouldn't, if it's a business, we wouldn't be able to support it.
Right, I know it's done in some national parks. It would be really nice for us to try and match those standards.
But if you can find an organisation in the local area,
I'll ask around about how other people do it. Yes.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool, thank you very much. I had one question, which was around, do you have much of a kind of forward plan of environmental projects that you're funding at the moment, other than what you kind of talked about? Are there a lot of others going on that you've kind of got bubbling around in the background, or? So
these are the main ones that we have at the moment. We rely on, my grants team there's 5 of us. So we rely on people coming to us and putting their projects on the Good Exchange, and then we can come in and assess them and work that way. But yeah, so these are sort of the main ones that are upcoming that we're looking to support at the moment. I mean, that's a really good point to highlight for folks and community groups, is to
access potentially some of the funding opportunities is through the goods exchange, and then you would assess that. And what kind of criteria are you looking for at that point?
So in terms of criteria, it's very, very broad. So we will consider any project if it's in the West Berkshire, North Hampshire area, and it's not statutory and it's not a business, then pretty much it's fair game to put on your application, and we'll work with you to shape it and get all the information that we need so that we can then put it to the committees or the board to decide the level of funding. Yeah, we'll engage with each project on an individual basis and work with them to get the project in the best shape it can be to access the most amount of funding. And if we can't do that, then I've got Julian in my team, who's our head of collaborative funding, and he works with other regional, national and local funders. So we do an awful lot of collaboration with other funders like Sheep Drove and Miss Lawrence Trust and Cider Foundation to come together to do bigger projects or projects that we can't fund because it's outside of our area.
Oh, cool. Good. Excellent. Thank you for that. Councillor.
Just a quick one, just on what Tony was talking about, the sort of hedge laying schemes and things. I mean, although you can't obviously support profit-making businesses and that, I mean, could you be supporting somebody who might want to give their time to train people, sort of particularly young people, in these sorts of skills, which are dying? And we've just heard of Richard, you know, I don't know whether his new project is involving these sort of things like training people. I know he laid a little hedge which is still flourishing sort of near his canal boat. So, I mean, just because there's lots of young people around who, you know, particularly young people who aren't particularly academic, who would love to learn skills that take them outdoors, as well as people who just think, you know, this sort of thing is just a great hobby, you know. But the more people we have in these types of skills, the more it will probably help to improve our landscape, you know, when we have them.
Yeah, part of Greenham Trust philosophy is not just funding things in isolation, but getting people to work together and getting different charities to work together. If there's an organisation, a non-profit organisation that has these training skills, then we can point them to Berkshire Youth or to CYP or Bishop's Green or whoever it is, for them to be able to go in and show what they do and collaborate and get the young people interested and involved in it. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't turn things on. I believe I'm here. Yep, hello. Hi, thank you very much. First, straight out of the back, Greenham Trust do some fantastic work. So what I'm about to say does not impact on the work you do in any way, not meant as a negative. It's more of a curiosity because you may or may not remember, but I put a grant application in through the Residents Association, and not with this hat on, with a different hat on quite recently. And as a new organisation, the contrary to what the radio says, which is, you know, come to us first when you haven't got, you know, there's hardly any paperwork. There's actually a lot of paperwork. You know, you're looking for finances. You're looking for, or it seemed to be, you were looking for established charities or established organisations rather than what would quite often happen. Here's the problem we're trying to solve, whether it's need to be an environmental project or not. We all need to get together as a non-profit group and get going with it. And I would have, how do we work with you to shorten that or reduce that amount of paperwork? Because I guess you need to know the people before you can really get into that.
So yeah, we have to do a certain amount of due diligence before So we do need to know your financial position. We need to know that you've got a bank account in the name of the organisation and it's not yours, and you're not going to end up driving off in a nice Rolls Royce.
I didn't think your grants were that big, but thank you very much. I'll know what to apply for next time.
Yeah, we try to make the process as simple as possible, but in order to be able to pitch each project to the committees, we need to have a fair amount of background information.
But would it be fair to say that your criteria are roughly aligned with the members' bid type criteria? It tends to be a capital orientated project, not revenue orientated, and
historically, it used to be mostly capital, but since cost of living crisis, we've changed the policies so that we'll allow revenue projects as well now, and so
but not ongoing revenue, just short-term revenue. So you don't consider funding power and things like that for community projects.
As part of a package of running costs for a charity, yes, that we would consider that. Yeah.
Oh, for a charity, but if you're just a residents' association, does that still consider something you can consider, or?
So in terms of so the things that you were asking for was sort of outside the scope of what we do, and the stuff that falls into what landlords should be doing, and not something that the trust should be doing. So
I think that's where some grey area exists between what you'd call a management company for a common area. That Landy hasn't adopted yet. The management company, it's not in their remit to do it because it wasn't there in the first place. And then you've got the residents actually take up, living somewhere and need something. And so you neither one nor the other.
Sounds like we probably need to take offline for that.
So.
That
yeah,
discussion.
we've had.
Yeah. Anyway, where I was going with it. So thank you very much, Stuart. Where I was going with it was, if you are aligned with the West Berkshire members bid process, I'm just wondering if you could do some short circuit type work here, saying by default, because of the organisations involved, which is West Berkshire and parish councils generally, as well as some other area, you could almost say by default, well, know the criteria, therefore you can be sure we'll match the funding for you, and just take even more paperwork away.
Potentially, but yes, we'll take it offline and have separate.
Okay.
Speaking the front door.
Thanks very much. As I go back to the first thing, you do some incredible work, so I wasn't trying to detract from that at all. So.
Thank you very much. Joe.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies. I was just going to come back on Councillor Tony Vickers' comment about the laid hedges. I was lucky enough to be involved with a community group in Great Shefford when I was in the countryside team, who had a workshop on how to lay a traditional laid hedge. So I can get those details and ask Paul Hendry to pass them on to you, if that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe. Yes, that would be. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions from our members of the public? Cool. Excellent. In that case, any questions, any last questions online at all? Just looking at the screen, no hands. Any more from in the room? No. Marvellous. Thank you so much for your presentation this evening, Rob. It's like I said, and I think thoughts have been echoed that the Greenham Trust do some great work, and we are lucky to have you. So thank you very much. Oh, right. Excellent. So we are on to item 5, which is electric wallpaper. I'm not entirely sure where this is going to go. So looking forward to this, which is the affordable low carbon solution for heating buildings. And we do, unfortunately, for those of you online, we do actually have a live demo in here this evening. So I'm going to hand over to Ian and Matt, that's a different name on my list again, Matt from NextGen to take us through demonstration, I think. If you just make sure when you're speaking, if you use your mics, the people at home will be able to hear you.
Hopefully. Can everybody hear me? Online, offline? Yeah. Okay. So quick introduction. I'm Ian Sanderson. I'm the founder, original investor in this organization, NextGen. It was originally conceived as a business just up the road in Andover, but we have a factory now in Romsey in Hampshire. So we're pretty local. The guinea pig aspect of this, got somebody very kindly, we should ask your name.
Laurie Lee.
Laurie's going to be our guinea pig for a minute, but we're going to invite you all to actually come and physically experience the system in a second. But the analogy of how this technology works is it basically delivers sunlight into a building. So we actually produce infrared, but in the absolute frequency that human beings respond to. So if you imagine being out sitting on a wall in the sunshine and effectively you feel warm, it could be a really cold day, but that sunshine makes you feel warm. If you moved into the shade, you'd feel cold. Well, technically that's what we do. But if you think about putting your hand on the wall you're sitting on and the wall's also warm, that basically is the infrared heating the actual fabric of that wall around you. And if you came to that back to that wall later on, it might actually still be warm. So NextGen basically has produced an electric radiator which produces sunlight, produces infrared to heat humans in workspaces or homes, and effectively to put energy into buildings which will stay in buildings rather than effectively be dissipated out from the buildings themselves. So as our guinea pig, this is a standard infrared camera which we're going to use to show you the technology. But if you can see here on the camera, those are the panels that are built into the roof of the gazebo that you're sitting under. So you are now basically sitting in sunshine inside a building. I'm going to show you this chair. The top of that chair. The top of that chair is already at 20 degrees. You can see that on the camera?
I can't see 20, but I can see that it is, yes,
okay,
going redder.
Yeah, so we're going to come back to that because as well as heating Laurie, we're actually heating up the fabric there of those chairs. But basically we put on the tables earlier a sample of the actual radiator. Now, by definition, you've all grown up with radiators. So this wouldn't be the most likely thing. If somebody said, here's a next generation radiator, this is not what you'd expect. But in very simple terms, the actual white paper is just fireproofing. It's just a protective covering across the actual heating element. But if you look at the samples that are in front of you, you'll see there's some pink strips on either side. And in the middle, there's a gray area. Now, the gray area is trillions, hundreds of trillions of particles of carbon. And we simply send low voltage, so 24 volt or 36 volt electricity from one side to the other. Now, this would be in a long strip. So when we bring the presentation up, you'll be able to see this. You've got our slides, I think, hopefully. And in sending that electricity through, we're agitating the trillions of particles of carbon to the point where they actually produce the infrared. Now, in essence, obviously, this is a very different way of providing energy into a room to a traditional radiator. If you go to the second slide, please. So you've all grown up with radiators on the wall, as you can see in the graphic, which was there and has now disappeared. Perfect. So you've all grown up effectively with, I mean, originally fires in the room and then basically radiators. The radiator basically circulates air, and I'm pretty new to the whole principle of heating homes or buildings. So I actually bought underfloor heating from a salesman who literally said to me, the perfect place to heat from is the floor because heat rises. Actually turns out it's completely the reverse of that. That's the worst place to heat from because it's not actually heat. It's not air that rises. It's just the molecular change in the structure of the air because of heat that's forcing it to rise. So if you think about that radiator, it's basically sending air up and around in a circle, a continuous circle of convection. Now, NextGen doesn't actually produce any convection at all in the way that it's actually delivering the energy into the room. And that's critical because the radiator, the standard radiator that you've had in your homes is effectively mobilizing all of the energy that you are spending your money on into air and allowing it to move. And just by pure physics, effectively hot heat, anything hot will travel to cold. So windows, for example, are cold spots within a room. So if you look at the number of rooms you go into, even in social homes, where the radiator is actually directly under the window, completely illogical from any other perspective other than that's actually the coldest spot in the room. And if you actually used a thermal camera to look at a window, you have what we call the cold drop away from the window. So that's the actual cold air on the inside of the window, doing the reverse of convection in the sense that you've got the cold drop air falling to the floor. So you've got cold drop energy going one way around the room, and you've got hot air that you're producing from the radiator circulating back the other way. And by having that mobilized in air, you just allow it to travel to cold spots in any building. Now in here, for example, we've actually got blown air, but I'm guessing there's probably a fossil fuel system, probably gas or oil, that's actually producing that heat in the first place. And we're piping all of that energy across the entire building to get it to where you're sitting now. And we're heating this huge space. This is probably 450, 500 square feet of space. And we're heating it in the same way, whether there's one person in the room, 10 people in the room, or 50 or 60 people in the room. So there's no agility at all in the way that we heat buildings like this. Now, the problem I had with that is that fundamentally, decarbonisation is on your agenda. He's shown us his portfolio of properties. And Rob's new buildings, he's building to a standard, EPCA is the kind of highest efficiency standard we can build to. But that's in the new build side. But Rob's got a portfolio that goes back practically to the war by the sounds of it. So as with council buildings across the whole of Berkshire, whether you're looking at schools, care homes, hospitals, fire stations, these buildings will cover a significant period of time in terms of when they were built. And the key question that we're kind of raising with this technology is, decarbonisation, yes, we understand why we want to move away from fossil fuel. But at the same time, as a council, are you asking the people that are developing your property portfolio to consider how they reduce waste? Because heating property, heating spaces like this, just based on the amount of space, not on the presence of people or on the basis of how space is used, really isn't acceptable going forward. We should have agile technologies that effectively allow you to heat based on people and the actual way that workspaces are used. And that's technically where NextGen fits into the marketplace. So we go to slide 2. This graphic here quite simply shows how NextGen would be put into a property. Now, in this case, a room in a house. But this is effectively what we've brought here. So we're going to ask you to come and stand under the actual technology and feel the influence of the infrared itself. Are you starting to feel warm?
I was about to ask when I could take my jacket.
I think we should allow you to do that. With that, I mean, absolutely.
I'm probably okay.
Right.
But
you can feel a sensation.
I'm extremely interested. I need to just say to you that I chair a local village, Beach Hills decarbonisation project.
Oh, right, excellent.
So I've come here this evening specifically to hear you.
Okay,
but,
well, we better put on a performance.
I didn't.
You didn't know you were going to be the guinea pig.
Right. I now understand that.
Okay. Well, basically then, what Laurie's feeling is infrared output from the ceiling. Because of the size of our radiator, if you think about the radiator that was on the wall and then look at that graphic showing the panels across the entire ceiling, we would cover about 70 to 80% of the ceiling in a home. And wherever you are in the room, effectively, you feel that energy completely uniformly across the entire room. It also, in terms of the extra energy over and above heating you, it's embedding energy into the walls, into the ceiling, into the floor, into the furniture. And that energy is storing in the fabric. That's putting your hand on the wall and feeling it's warm. Now, the critical part of that is that that energy will stay in the fabric for hours after it's turned off. So rather than put it into air, it travels to the coldest part in the room and then it leaves the actual building. Here we're creating a battery almost out of the fabric of the room itself. Now, that's particularly relevant. When we bought this company, NextGen set up as a social impact and sustainability company. We actually wanted to influence the lives of people first. So that was our immediate focus. So social housing is the initial marketplace that we pushed into. We bought the company in February 2023. We've already got 65 social housing groups across the UK working with us. Sovereign is a client. Reading Council are also running a pilot project looking at some of their challenges with housing stock. They've got some really poor housing stock. Now, one of the key things about this issue of holding the energy in the fabric of the building itself is it means that we can be used across new buildings, but we can be used right the way down to the hardest stock you've got in terms of hardest to heat buildings, hardest to heat homes, because we're almost agnostic to the fabric of the building, because we heat people first, then we actually store energy in the fabric of the room itself, stopping it from effectively leaving, which is the reason that we spend so much money on insulation, windows, etc., etc. So basic philosophy is heat people based on presence. Heat rooms like this, this, for example, is a ceiling tile with this technology embedded into it. You're sitting below 600 by 600 ceiling tiles. We could literally line this row of seats, that row of seats, just have the ceiling tiles directly above people. And we actually, under our system, Caroline could choose to have it on in that corner, and Stuart could decide not to have it on. And you could choose to have it on. So it would heat you, not heat you, but it would heat you. Imagine the saving that would be made in terms of energy usage by giving people choice. Yeah, we have our own sales office, effectively each individual people in an office is about the same size as this, effectively chooses whether to have the tiles on above their desk or not. You have literally a little switch or a sensor. Yeah. So we're installing in care homes where when somebody in a care home room decides to go to the communal area, a little tag they're wearing knows they've left their room and gone to the communal area, and it turns off the room they're in. And when they come back out the communal area, it knows they've left and they're going to their room, and it turns their heating back on. And it's completely automated. So it's a case of a unique delivery of energy that warms you up as people first, effectively stores energy within the fabric of the building, and then literally the most granular controls that we can bring to market. And they're all based around people and presence. So we're literally quoting from hospitals to schools to airports. We're bidding 9 airport projects in the UK, where we're looking at actually converting across to this technology. 80% of what we're doing is combined with solar to battery. So the whole renewable piece is massively important to us. But that allows us effectively to kind of, significantly reduce the overall cost of the energy that we're delivering into these projects anyway. But it becomes a virtuous circle. And, you should be, as a council, pushing across all of the building projects that you've got, whether they're old buildings or new buildings. You should be pushing decarbonisation, 100%, but you should also be asking the question of, are we actually minimising the amount of wastage that buildings inherently have had? Because we've all lived, culturally, we've lived with just heating space. We've not had the ability to just heat people. So if you took the NHS, we did a presentation yesterday to an NHS body that's got 2,500 hospitals in the UK. They effectively just heat everywhere at 23 to 25 degrees every day. And even in the summer, a lot of those rooms are still actually heated. Now, imagine the saving that could be made, but imagine being in a hospital ward where the actual baseline temperature is lower, but you have a technology like this above each bed that would give you the choice. So you could have it turned on, but if I don't want to be at 23 degrees, I don't need to be. Yeah, that's helping people first. It's creating a better working environment for the hospital staff, and it's massively reducing the amount of energy that's actually used in those given spaces. I went to a hospital in Eastbourne 2 weeks ago into a consulting area where there were 40 consulting rooms, and we checked on the roster, half of them had not been visited for 2 weeks, but they've been heated 24 hours a day. Now that's not just about technology, it's about culture. It's about asking the question, do we need to actually expend that energy in that space? So if we quickly move forward on the slides, because I'm absolutely sure that I'll go over on time. So go again and again. So this is an installed ceiling tile product. You can see on the bottom left-hand corner, the camera image that we're going to use to show you here. That basically is seamless. You walk into that room, you don't see anything. There's no wall, there's no radiators on the wall. That's one of the big advantages in social housing, for example, is we're taking radiators out. Take the care home, taking the radiators out takes away an obstacle that people can fall over or people can scald themselves on. So there's multiple layers of advantages to this technology. The fact that it's embedded into the fabric of the building and you can't touch it, you can't see it, but you know it's there. If you go forward again. So next slide. Taking Rob's conundrum of his very old hangars, for example. This product here, we call it a Raft. This allows us to heat people in the middle of large factory spaces. So rather than heat, I mean, we've just hosted Amazon. They've got 1 million square foot facility with 1,000 workstations where people pack parcels. And they're trying to heat the entire space because the new health and wellbeing legislation means they have to have an ambient of 16 degrees for people to comfortably work in. But they can't achieve that without huge capital expenditure and a huge amount of wastage of energy. But NextGen will literally allow them to heat the people working in their workstations. So it's kind of that agility over and above advanced controls and actually pushing for cultural change. You as an organization need to start asking the question about wastage. And then over and above that, the type of operations that you can develop and the facilities and the capabilities you can give people will allow people to make choices on when they want to heat, when and where. Why are we heating empty space all the time? Need to be asking that question. So I really want you to come and physically experience it because I literally can talk forever. But it's here, it's right here. Laurie's looking slightly pink. If you come up and basically have a look, because for the people online, the best thing that we can do is you've experienced it and you can vocalize it when you go back to your positions. But come and join us here and then we'll show it to you.
Provide a running commentary if you like. I can see beads of sweat forming.
Chairman, while the demo is going on, can we ask questions from online? Because we obviously can't take part in the demo.
Yeah, happy for you to just hold fire a second, Adrian, and I'll be with you.
Yeah, you can feel the heat, obviously, as you stand here.
That's the camera. But if you sit down rather than stand, so you're not quite as close to it.
Yeah.
It looks like they're at a dodgy British barbecue under a gazebo.
And some, yeah.
Like this with pouring rain, right?
So you're literally sitting in sunshine. I mean,
Yeah.
Think about the concept of capturing it through solar, delivering it back into homes or buildings through this. It is that virtuous as a process. But once you've been in it, we'll leave you in it for about another 10, 15 seconds. I want you to walk back out again to here and then go back into it because then you'll really feel the difference.
The
So
seat,
Laurie's been cooking
the
for a while.
seat doesn't feel warm, so it
No.
hasn't absorbed any heat.
And I forgot to check the temperature of the seat before Caroline sat in it, so we might have to pick an area where she wasn't actually seated. But if you step back out again, you should feel the difference.
You definitely can't feel that nice warmth. I mean, it's not, have we got heat on in here at the moment?
The ambient was about 18 degrees.
We used to have dreadful problems with that. Whether they amended it with either pumping away too hot or we were freezing. Have they sorted it? Have they? They sorted it. Anyway, it seems okay at the moment.
So that chair was, I'm taking the edge where Aaron doesn't sit, but the chair was at 20 degrees, it's at 27 onwards. So
Wow.
if you look at the floor is at roughly 21 degrees. The table will actually be in the line. You see how the table's glowing?
Yeah.
Can you go into the
So
floor?
that's 22, 23.
You can't control the temperature.
Yeah.
That was going to be my question around controlling the temperature.
Yeah, the floor at the Shannon is 19 degrees. So 2 degrees difference.
Because an older person's going to like it, I don't know. Sort of really hard.
So it would be controlled thermostatically like any other, in a house, you would have a thermostat exactly the same
And
way.
you can set the thermostat?
You set the thermostat to the level that you're comfortable with.
The question I'm going to ask Tony.
In a house, you have thermostatic control. In a building, you might have thermostatic control if you were heating the whole space.
I got to go
one, isn't
to.
it?
You might just hear the concept.
Okay, can you hear me now? if I carry.
Yes.
So in a house, you would have thermostatic control in every room, and every room of a house is an independent heating zone in its own right. So you would actually say, so in social housing, we're telling social housing tenants to heat the space they're using. And we're telling them that they can literally, we've all grown up with, with gas, you might turn it on an hour before you get out of bed in the morning. Here, you don't need to. If you see how quickly it warmed up from when I turned it on, within 2 to 3 minutes, you feel warm. So that kind of factor of preheating goes away. And then once you've actually had it on, because it's storing energy in the room, it will re-radiate that energy over time. So we've got social housing tenants that we tell them to turn it on, say from 6 to 7 in the morning when they can still be on low tariff energy, and it will still be warm 3 or 4 hours later. And that's the re-emission of that energy coming out of the walls. Yeah, which is why we put the seating in. Yeah, if you sit, then that would give you the better impression.
Oh, see, it's on the wall.
Yeah, so in housing, it's in walls. In buildings, we do a completely 3-dimensional mix. So we do underfloor, we do walls, and we do ceilings as well. Yeah, this is basically just a demonstration. So this is more intense than it would be if you were in a house. This would be more related to a building. But if you thought individual tiles against where you're sitting would actually allow you to choose to heat. So Rob could have it on, Nick might not have it on. That ability to choose exactly where you're sitting, the temperature you want to personally be, that's completely unique with this technology.
Marvelous.
Okay, what about the cost? You're doing it in social housing?
Could we bring it back together and ask the question using the mic? Because I think there's quite a few questions to come off that. So for those of you online, it's quite an interesting piece of equipment. It's a shame you can't see it in kind of real life, but it's certainly an interesting piece of equipment. Using the sample wallpaper here is really fascinating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Adrian to ask a question because he was going to come in just before we went over to the kind of demo. So Councillor Abs, do you want to ask?
Yeah, thanks very much. Gas is approximately 7 pence per kilowatt hour, effectively for space heating, give or take. And yes, but the thing, one of the things about setting a temperature beforehand, i.e. the positives of space heating in that way, is that you're walking into a space and once it's been heated up, you're walking in and you feel warm. What I'm hearing from yourself, or what I haven't heard from yourself, is that the cost associated with the heating, what it averages out for a 3-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom, whatever you're using as your standard. But also, you say it's quicker, well, fine, but how quick is quick? Is it seconds? Is it minutes? I certainly assume it's not hours, but I assume it's in the minutes and seconds. So in other words, am I going to walk into the room and effectively, because it's not been on all day, but it's been freezing outside, I breathe out and all I can see is steam coming out on my breath, or am I coping, in which case I'm predetermining the room's temperature by doing something like you would with central heating to make sure it's not that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm trying to pick out the questions from what you said. So
the major question is cost comparison to using standard gas.
So
here we go. Right, thanks.
So the easy one to cover is, right now in terms of the marketplace, whichever way you look at it, the government has to address the pricing situation between electricity and gas for generically the actual journey through decarbonisation to happen. And if you're a consumer right now, the reality is none of these technologies, whether it's NextGen, whether it's heat pumps, none of us effectively can compete with a 1-to-4 ratio in energy pricing. So
okay, fine. So how close do you get?
So one of the big pushes from our perspective, that's really why I wanted to see almost everything we do connected to renewable and connected to energy storage, on the basis that then we can future-proof housing and social housing. And effectively, we are delivering complete projects with that mix of technologies now, where we've got people living roughly on 50 pence a day in 3-4 bedroom homes. amplify that forward, we've had meetings with ministers from the government who've assured us that at least the levy on electricity, the green levy, which is currently on electricity, will effectively be removed over time. That's about a 13.5% levy on electricity. Why they put the green levy on electricity rather than on gas? Votes is probably the only answer. But I mean, in essence, as they start to rebalance the fuel source, we are in pure efficiency terms, we're 3 times more efficient than a gas boiler in terms of kilowatts of energy used. So we don't need the energy price to move very far to be in a situation where we would be at least on par to the performance of a gas boiler in terms of the monetary cost of running it. Actually, we already have customers in social housing who are saving money against gas, but primarily because they are agile heating within the home and they're heating in zones rather than just heating whole homes as one item.
Do you have any studies on, various, the older the property is, the more leaky it is generally, and therefore the more your technology would apply, because you wouldn't be trying to overcome the same kind of problem. But I'm still struggling. It sounded a bit like you were saying 1.5 to 2 times the price increase in gas would make you equivalent. Is that?
Yes, if we see about a 15% swing between electricity pricing and gas, we would effectively be a par
Sorry,
value.
I didn't understand. 50. So could you say that again, please?
Sorry, if the pricing of gas to electricity changes by about 15%, we would work on par value to a gas boiler in terms of the actual cost per day that you would have as a running cost.
So just a 15% increase on gas price.
Yeah, would be sufficient for us to be par value.
That's remarkably good. So I don't know if you've got any study. I'd be very interested in share.
After the meeting, we've got multiple case studies that we can basically say.
Please do so. Sorry, Stuart, for jumping in there, but I have to go to another meeting as well. But I really wanted to. By the way, the idea that you've got, as soon as they sort the electricity cost out, you're on to an absolute winner. So I wish you all the very best with it. It's the best idea I've seen presented in terms of being efficient heating of the UK, body of buildings that I've heard in a long, long time. So
just the last point before you go. The other thing that we've got to move to is actually looking at the through life cost of heating homes rather than just the actual cost of energy. Because if you look at the government's almost one-dimensional position on heat pumps, and I've got nothing against heat pumps at all, in the right homes with the right insulation level, they're absolutely the right technology.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the problem you've got there is that they're significantly more expensive in their through life cost. So even though they have an energy efficiency, which is not as published at 3 to 4 times more efficient, but is circa 1.5 to 2 times more efficient, that technology is just fundamentally expensive to have in a property over time, because you've got a high capex investment to put it in the property in the first place. You have to spend significant amounts of money on insulation, and then you've got the running costs, and you've got annualized maintenance, and probably within 10 years, a requirement to replace the actual heat pump. And when you run that through, NextGen is lower capital cost. It's going to be very similar in running costs, but we have no maintenance over life. So in social housing, that's why we've got so much traction in social housing already, because the housing associations can get away from this constant requirement from an OPEX perspective to actually service and maintenance these products. So I think the government are coming to terms with the fact that you as organizations need a toolbox of products. And this is one of that toolbox on the housing side. On the building side, I think that you'll see fusions of heat pumps with these types of agile technologies. So you'll heat, if you took an airport, for example, you'd heat the check-in area, which is generally a huge cube, probably with a heat pump. But in the other areas, if the walkways out from the terminal to the airplanes, for example, we're developing a thing called the wave, which effectively, if you've got those kind of rolling walkways that you walk on, we would just heat you while you're on the walkway. Imagine again the savings that could be made with that. So it's, for me, it's been technology agnostic. It's critical that we put pressure on government to basically incentivize people to move. And thereafter, it's about basically looking at the genuine through life cost of these technologies.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
one thing you didn't mention, of course, were the health benefits and how you can stop mold forming in the walls. It's on your
Yes.
website.
So there is a slide. Last slide in the deck is
Was
actually
it?
is a picture of a damp and mold property that I visited. Don't know if we
Right.
can it up,
Yeah.
but it's a really interesting.
Yeah, for landlords of older properties, you're in a very good situation if you can start to cure some of that rather than having to re-damp proof the whole house. You're onto a massive capital gain there.
You should come and work in the sales department. Basically,
But my name's on the internet. I'm happy to work with anybody that's involved in this kind of technology. I am in marketing myself. In all seriousness, if I could be an advocate for you, I would be. I think you're one of the best solutions I've seen out there for a long time. So good luck with the whole thing, and thank you very much, Stuart, for letting me ramble on there. I've got to go though, I'm afraid. So take care.
literally take 10 seconds to explain this slide.
Yeah, and then we'll open up to questions.
So I took these pictures myself personally. This is a tenement block in Glasgow. The tenants had moved out 5 days before. So you had a building basically which was semi-inducing the problem, and then you had over occupancy. So this was supposed to be a flat for 4 people. It had 8 people living in it. What you're seeing there, the bathroom, before we could put NextGen in, we scrubbed it 3 times to get it to that point. Honestly, when I walked in, I was almost sick. The stench was really repressive. They'd not actually flagged up the damp and mold issue because of the over-occupancy in the property. But the exercise here, this was a government-sponsored programme in Scotland. It was Scottish government money behind this. The moisture content in the walls was 35% when we went in. We reduced it to 5% in 5 days. Now, that normally takes them 2 months of blowing hot air into those properties with dehumidifiers to get to that same point. So the exercise here was dealing with extreme damp and mold. Do I need to decant the tenant? Probably not. We could do this room by room, but how quickly can I get the tenant back into the property and at the lowest cost possible? You know, Awab's law is coming through for a reason. People are dying in social homes because of damp and mold. So we're in a position where we can help eradicate it at the higher end in terms of extremes of this type. But also wherever our technology is put in any home, it actually will effectively mitigate the future risk of damp and mold because of the way the actual infrared keeps the fabric dry and effectively warm. Good.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Just
Oh,
if
nice
you
and warm.
use that mic just there, Laurie, or you borrow that one, and then I'll open up.
So I've got, I want to know a lot more detail behind the scenes, so I'll come to you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, but generally, CapEx cost for 100 square meter 3-bed,
Yeah. Okay.
what kind of money? Can you DIY this?
You will be able to DIY it. I mean, I couldn't because I'm terrible at DIY. You absolutely can DIY.
Okay, and obviously you've got your wires here. How are you retrofitting that then?
Yeah, so everything's encapsulated. So when you walk into a room, you literally don't see anything. Shall I use the microphone? So coming back to your first question in terms of costs. So if you took, say, 2 to 3 bed flats, that would be 40 to 60 square meters. The actual system cost for a flat of that size would be somewhere between £2,300 and £2,800. And it would cost roughly the same to get it installed. Install, by the way, I just want to make this point because this is critical to our social impact. We are actually going to our social housing clients and employing their tenants to actually be trained to do the installs on this. We've even been talking to the big issue about actually bringing people back into the workforce to train them up to install this. This project goes to plan. We'll need 10,000 installers by 2030. We're hoping to be doing about 150,000 homes a year by then. So costs around kind of, if you said £5,500 to £6,000 fully installed, redecorated with the system in a 2 to 3 bedroom flat. In a 2 to 3 bedroom house, the actual install cost would be roughly £4,000 to £5,000. Well, the system costs £4,000 to £5,000, with install costing about £3,000. So around circa £8,000 to have a complete house system. That would be every room working independently. So every room is a zone. you literally can control the system from an app, as well as control it in the room itself. And once it's installed, as I said, there's no maintenance ongoing. So it's maintenance free as a technology in the system. If you compared that rough order of magnitude against current heat pump pricing, we're seeing about £13,500 as an average install price for heat pumps in social housing at the moment. So significant reduction in capex, similar energy consumption. I'm massively committed to making sure that everything we do is with solar and battery wherever we can. If we pair this with solar to battery, we actually can take out the inverters. If you think of solar to a battery, the battery stores energy at 48-volt DC. To put that through a heat pump, you have to effectively convert that into AC at 240 volts. So you get about an 8 to 12% loss just on converting back into 240 volts. We can remove the inverter, but we also think we can remove the actual power solutions going forward as well, which would bring down our system cost again. So we're massively committed to deploying this in volume. Social housing is a perfect environment to do that. We've got several housing associations that have tested this against heat pumps, against storage heaters, and effectively determined that we would basically be the majority of their stock going forward. Our biggest single issue is government right now. We need to get the technology recognised within SAP for EPC scoring, and HEM, which is the home energy modelling principles that are coming from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero going forward. We're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds trying to get the technology recognised so that it's a positive contributor within the EPC scoring on your home. As soon as we've got that, I think it will really move very quickly.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Councillor Cole, I think you had a question.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. Thank you for that. I've seen some social housing recently in my ward, which is in a really, really terrible state. So I welcome the fact that you can work with the social housing associations on that. I'm aware that there are regulations forthcoming about EPC ratings for private landlords and for social landlords. And the fact that people have to meet those standards is being used as an excuse by social housing providers to offload property. So if there's anything you can do around that, I think that would be very welcome. I represent a rural ward, and there is really considerable concern that social housing is getting sold off right now. And the housing associations are allowed to use the proceeds of those sales in other areas of the country where they own property. So I think we will see a net loss of social housing, and there are generations of families in the villages in my wards who have lived there, you know, for 100 years, 200 years probably. So losing that is a real big nightmare for the community. So anything that you can do around that, I think, is extremely welcome.
So statistically, you're right. There is a net loss in social housing right now. So you've got the government saying we need 1 million homes extra in social housing. You have social housing groups saying we need 2 million homes extra in that space. Yet we do actually have a net loss. We've gone into or invested in a consortium structure that actually will buy, it's called Blueprint, and it will actually buy up either derelict housing or social housing that the social housing providers don't have the economics to bring it back into the housing stock. And we'll put technologies like this with solar and battery into those properties. The first one came online in Leyland, which is near, it's in Lancashire. I'm not even sure where it's near. And I actually visited the property literally 2 weeks ago with the BBC. So the BBC One show are doing a feature on this technology and its influence on damp and mold. And actually was really fascinating because it was a derelict house that's been brought back into the actual housing stock. The cost of rectification against building new, it was half the price to rectify that house as it would have been to knock it down and build a new house, let alone the carbon CO2 issue around knocking things down and rebuilding, which in itself is a significant negative. So, you know, to me, it comes back to one thing, it comes back to funding. And, you know, from my perspective, the only way you can get commercial, corporate, third-party funding into this, because the government's not going to keep fronting. You know, I mean, we worked it out this morning, we were doing an interview this morning, And we worked out they need £180 billion to keep funding the actual £7,500 grant on heat pumps. You know, that money's not there. We know it's not there. So that's £5 million a year the Chancellor's got to find just to fund heat pumps. So, you know, from my perspective, I'm looking at it as a social impact business. I'm then looking at it as an investor and going, as an investor, how can we make this work? You know, the airport projects we're looking at will be fully funded by third-party lenders. And the lenders investing on the basis that you've got energy source, you know, the energy being created and stored and deployed within the fabric of those properties, effectively allows us to create the funding circle in the first place. Because, you know, as much as we don't like corporates making a profit, the reality is that's the only way we get the money there in the first place. We're doing the same thing in social housing. So we are bidding in whole 22,000 social homes to be redeveloped in one block. We think it'll take 3 years to literally put solar to battery to NextGen to a hot water solution in all 24,000 homes. Imagine the amount of work we can create within the local environment to get that done anyway. But, you know, for me, the big issue here is just, you know, getting that virtual circle to work between renewable to energy storage, you know, grid demand. We don't have the grid capacity to support all of this electrification anyway. So, you know, there's just, I think the whole process is the wrong way around at the moment. We should be putting people first, not EPC scores. If we put people first, we'll actually put health and well-being at the front of that. And that will solve the social housing problem.
Thank you. Any Councillor Vickers?
So your problem is you've got the technology sorted, so
Yeah.
you think people have confidence in the technology, and there's no questions about that, and don't seem to be any drawbacks. So you're saying you really need the government to recognise this as the way forward, and to stop, you know, thinking of other alternatives, heat pumps and things. So it sounds as though you've got a block somewhere. Your block is getting government confidence.
No, I think the block is effectively you know, there are lobbies within the heating industry. So you've got the gas lobby, you've got the heat pump lobby. There isn't a lobby for new, innovative, small SMEs. So you have the lobby on your own right, or you have to spend a huge amount of money. Now, we're lucky we're an investment company, so we're spending £400,000 trying to get through a thing called Appendix Q, which gives us that registration of the technology to go into EPC. But there are lots of other companies I know that are equally as capable of making a difference as NextGen, that just don't have that financial backbone. But, you know, for me, the government has to make a choice. There's no one-dimensional solution here. There's no silver bullet. You need, you know, as a council, you need a toolkit of different technologies where you can agnostically look at your housing, you can agnostically look at your buildings and determine the right solution. The solution for your fire station is going to be different to your solution for a school, which is going to be different to your solution for a care home. And you should have that choice. And at the moment, government policy around heat pumps is not giving you that choice. Even the funding schemes that are behind, you know, buildings or housing generally are being driven towards heat pumps at this point. So it's, you know, government is the only thing holding us back right now.
Directly to Ed Miliband to talk to.
We've tried to. Fortunately, we have Caroline Noakes as our local MP, who's the Deputy Speaker in the House of Commons now. So we are working with her, and we have consultants who are working on policy positioning for us. And we also have the benefit, we've had huge help from the Welsh Government and huge help from the Scottish Government. So we have validations with them. We're defined as an innovation in Wales, where you can put it in any house in Wales without any responsibility to the EPC score. So in social housing in Wales, we actually have hundreds of homes being 100% funded by Welsh Government. It's just UK central government, the lobbying around gas against, you know, they've just reduced the penalty on gas boiler installations for the gas boiler manufacturers from £5,000 a gas boiler to £300. Yeah, and we've got Ed Miliband basically, as you say, pushing the fact that they're massively committed to decarbonisation, and then they make decisions like that, and you're like, that doesn't stack up. Yeah, we'll circulate afterwards. We'll circulate some information afterwards so that you know where we are.
Councillor Carter and then Councillor Cover.
I have just got a quick question. I don't want to go back over this.
No.
Try again. No. So it's red. 111.
The red lights on.
Red lights on. But it's the other one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Is it me? Oh, it's okay. Try that. Is that better?
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry, thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to go back over what you just said. But I noticed that when I had a look before the meeting at online for this,
Yeah.
I found an energy supplier who you seem to probably be partnered with, and there's a blog actually from February 2023 talking about it, and it may just be a quirk of their blog, but then they say that they say they recently stumbled across an intriguing way to heat a building, but they then see, I've lost the page now, but it then actually says, but now have a look at our heat pumps. So, I mean, that may be their drop off, and obviously from a public point of view, certainly there's a bit of scope for confusion there.
Yeah.
So that particular supplier is currently pushing the heat pumps for whatever reason.
Yeah, so we're not connected to them in any form.
No, okay.
And so you're talking about Octopus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are in a partnership with E.ON.
Okay.
And with E.ON, as an example, they basically sold 7,000 solar to battery solutions last year, but they only sold 100 heat pumps to go with them. So they've looked at this technology and gone, okay, the consumer's not literally buying into the principle, even with the grant, and they're looking for us to be part of their what they call their able to pay marketplace. Octopus is an interesting example. I know the CEO. I've met the CEO of Octopus. He wanted us to work with him. I have a fundamental problem with what they're doing because their tariff structures, which look amazing, are actually all marketing. They're actually subsidizing losses on those tariffs to try and actually manipulate the market. And that's the problem you've got, is you've got small companies like us who effectively just want the freedom to trade. And you've got massive utility groups who want to dictate the future of a market. And we just sit in the middle, Nick, trying to be, for me, the critical thing with all of this is be honest. I said to you to this meeting, right now, we can't outperform a gas boiler. But if you go onto Octopus's website, it will tell you that you'll save money on putting a heat pump in against the boiler. And you won't. So, the whole market is just full of competing positions. And for us, we actually declined the opportunity to work with Octopus. E.ON is putting us through a thing called Eco4. I don't know if you know Eco4 is a funding scheme, but it's through Ofgem, not through the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. And in that case, that's a program targeting hard to heat homes. And to be specifically in that, you have to basically be on fuel benefits. So it's targeting the worst of the housing with the people that are most affected by fuel poverty. So those are the areas where we want to focus. We will have and launch a consumer product, coming back to the DIY comment. We are talking to Travis Perkins and CEF and various other big groups about basically reselling the technology into consumer. But at the moment, we really wanted to make an impact in social housing first, and then in the kind of wider building space, very specifically focusing on education and healthcare in the initial phase.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Culver.
Just a quick question. Have you got any council clients so far?
Lots and lots of council clients.
Any in this area in the southeast?
Well, Reading Council with the housing project. Silver Homes is a client on the social housing side. I'll send you some more examples.
Thank you.
It would be great to see some case studies if you've got.
Yeah, there's a whole
certainly around
host of
local
case
authorities.
studies. Basically, because Oliver was going to come, when they told me to come, they all know that it takes me 20 minutes to just say hello. So they gave me a slide deck that's got about 4 slides in it. So they set me up. But anyway, but no, we've got a fantastic deck. We've got some amazing case studies, and we've got case studies on the damper mold. That for me is the thing that's been most shocking out of all of this since I got involved with this project. Going to social housing, going to tenants and actually seeing the way they're living. You can't have any bigger motivator in terms of trying to make a technology work than seeing people how we're letting them live in that environment, I've no idea. So we're just keen on making a difference. I mean, we're a business, we need to make a profit. We are actually setting up a charitable foundation, which Caroline notes is helping us with, which will focus on fuel poverty and damp and mold. But it'll initially, a bit like the Greenham Trust issue, initially it'll focus very much around the factory in the Romsey area, and then we'll widen out. So we're looking for each of the councils or each of the social housing groups we work with to actually allocate houses that would be then invested in by the trust.
Thank you. Any other questions from around the room?
Are you warm enough now?
Thank you very much for coming along, and thank you for the kind of demo as well. It's
Definitely come and stand under it before we turn.
I will. Yeah, it's been fascinating. It's been really, really interesting, and it certainly looks like a really interesting piece of kit and technology that we've got coming through. And you know, hopefully we will be able to see how it evolves and how the uptake goes with it.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, absolutely.
I did mean to ask if there are any more questions online. Sorry, before I wrap this part up. No. Cool. Excellent. Thank you ever so much for your time. And
Thank you.
we will. Marvellous. Okay, so that takes us on to item 6, which is any other business. So is there any other business around the room at all? No. Anything else online? No. Marvellous. So we do have a part 2, which is the action log. So I obviously conscious of wrapping that up. So there is a recommendation to exclude the press and public. So I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Councillor Vickers to second. All those in favour? Marvellous, thank you. Shall we take just 5 minutes quickly and just exchange details over there, and then we will move them outside?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Right, those online will be back in a couple of minutes, 5 minutes or so, folks.